achieved.
UFC 210 could actually turn out to be one of the most damaging events the UFC has had in recent memory. First and foremost, Daniel Cormier misses weight, has the massive weight controversy when it comes to reweighing and getting, keeping his title. We have the breast implant saga that's, the fight's on again, the fight's off again. Cynthia Calvillo puts on a great fight. Pro Gonzalez holds her own, but still, that fight was marred. Then you throw in the fact, the Gegard Mousasi Chris Weidman finish, very debatable. Tossing the fact on top of that, it's Mousasi's last fight in his contract. He has a good relationship with Scott Coker going back to his Strikeforce days. He's been very vocal about his disappointment with fighter pay. They would love nothing more than to sign him to really build their middleweight division around Silva, because they don't have, a lot of talent in that one division. So bringing in a guy like Mousasi would be massive. You have the retirement of Anthony Rumble Johnson as well, so that hurts. So when you look at it across the board, if Mousasi happens to leave to Bellator, you lose Mousasi. Weidman has now lost 3 in a row. Anthony Rumble Johnson retires. Daniel Cormier's already questionable reputation as champion, considering he lost to John Jones, takes another hit for potentially missing weight. Then you throw in all on top of that, Patrick Cote retiring, so a long-standing guy who is a staple of the Canadian MMA scene when you come to Canada. I know it's minor, but still worth mentioning. Patrick Cote, best of luck going forward. Same with Rumble Johnson. But UFC 210 was a pretty, at least the main card, was a pretty devastating event for the promotion. We'll see how things go, but it would not shock me one bit if Mousasi winds up fighting for Bellator the next time we see him in the cage. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC on Fox 24 event, which will feature one of the longest-standing champions in the UFC's history, Demetrious Johnson, defending his title against new title challenger Wilson Hayes. There are 4 fights in the main card. I'll be giving you all my preliminary picks over at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, I've struggled a little bit, hit a bit of a slump. I am coming off a 7-6 show. My bet packs were atrocious, did not produce. Just very disappointed in my performance that way. I was really, really disappointed in the fact that I flip-flopped on the Charles Oliveira fight. I had Oliveira picked, and I changed Oliveira, steamrolled him, and submitted him fairly easily. But beside the point, that would have only made me, 8-5. I would have wanted a little bit more cash. I would have had the Oliveira bet mixed in there. But it was a bad show. It's been a bit of a bad run, so we're working hard to turn it around. But, I've kind of fallen into a couple of bad habits when breaking down fights, and I've trying to get away from them from this card. We'll see if that produces any better results. But the bet packs will be available for $15. I made the last subscription $15 off, so basically you're getting a free bet pack out of 3 cards. So basically you're getting 2 for the price of 3. Sorry, 3 for the price of 2. 2 for the price of 3 would be idiotic. But we're gonna try and figure something out here. Certainly, based on my performance, I would not recommend buying the bet pack, but I can't say much because I could very well turn it around. Hot streaks always start somewhere. Let's hope it's on this night. And without further ado, let's get to the first main card prediction. The 4-fight main card kicks off in the UFC's featherweight division as the 5th-ranked Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens, 25 wins and 13 losses, takes on the unranked Brazilian Renato Moicano. In a very interesting fight when you look at the way things break down. Moicano, I said, undefeated, 2-0 in the UFC. He had a 1.5-year layoff after his debut. He's coming into this fight after 11 months on the shelf. So certainly he's been very inactive since coming to the promotion. For Jeremy Stevens, he is a long-standing veteran with the company. He is coming off a loss to a former champion in Frankie Edgar. He is 2-4 in his last 6 fights, but he's been fighting some top-level guys. He does hold upset victories over Renan Barao and the Dennis Bermudez knockout, a fight I correctly predicted. The losses in that span: former champion Frankie Edgar, upcoming title challenger Max Holloway, the aforementioned Charles Oliveira, and always top-ranked Cub Swanson. Now, Moicano will have a 3-inch height advantage, he'll have a 1-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger man by 3 years. The Brazilian, when you look at his record, he has 5 wins by submission and 5 decision victories. Stevens, on the other side, 16 knockouts overall, 6-9 on the scorecards, 3-3 in fights ended by submission. So definitely, experience-wise, favors Stevens. He's got a better finish. His finishing rate's pretty impressive as far as knockouts are concerned. Obviously, he does have a vulnerability to something Moicano does well, which is submissions. Now, Moicano, on the feet, not a volume striker. He likes to sit on the outside, pick his spots. He throws a pretty good left jab and a lot of left hooks as well, and he will slip back and counter when the situation presents itself. When he fought Tom Nanimaki in his debut, he hurt. And, when Tuhugov, the last man he faced, was coming forward and attacking, Moicano was having a lot of success throwing flurries and catching him as he came in. He throws some decent kicks, working up and down the body, some hard low kicks. He'll throw a jumping switch kick. Nice variety there. Again, because he is so good on the mat, he's not afraid to throw those high-risk maneuvers that could allow him to wind up on his back. Now, and we'll talk about that momentarily. Now, a couple of things I didn't like what I saw on his feet. He allows his opponents to lead the exchange more often than not. He will fire back. He had some issues against Tuhugov when he was under pressure, and he was getting actually pushed so hard, so quickly back, and not knowing what to do. He ended up just falling to his back. It seemed like a balance thing. If he does get taken down, he's very aggressive on the ground. He used rubber guard in that matchup very well to isolate his opponent. He showed a very opportunistic back take. Wasn't able to lock it up and really finish it. But he has 5 wins by all 5 of his submission wins are come by rear naked choke. So he's the type of fighter that if he gets in a position to put the fight away, he knows what he wants to do, and it's probably rotate to the back and look to start and try and sink the choke in. He can be taken down, as we saw in the Tuhugov fight, but he's very good at getting back up. Now, looking at Jeremy Stephens, we are very familiar with Stephens here. He is known for his power. He has a massive right hand, but he has a variety of other weapons. He KO'd Dennis Bermudez with a flying knee. Talk about whatever he hits you with. Now, he needs to avoid headhunting, which is crucial to his success. He cannot afford to chase the knockout. He has struggled against more technical strikers when he goes looking to finish them with one shot, and they tend to pick him apart. Offensively, 2.79 significant strikes landed per minute versus 2.58 absorbed, so not a great striking, exchange rate. What he's looking, again, use his power to make up for what he lacks in volume. When you look at his overall, he ranges between the mid-30s and the mid-50s in significant strikes. But again, all it takes is one really significant one to change the course of the matchup. He throws a very good straight right hand counter when his opponent starts throwing leg kicks. And that's something Moicano, if he decides to go with a kick-heavy offense, look for that right hand to come over the top that Stephens likes to throw and really, he can do a lot of damage with just one shot. He still needs to mix it up, working his low kicks when the opportunity presents itself. We have seen guys, especially, Frankie Edgar had some success, but especially Cub Swanson was able to back Jeremy Stephens up with a lot of feints and fakes and keep him guessing and made him, start and restart his combinations and his offensive attacks, and he just wasn't nearly as successful. Now, one thing worth noting is Stephens has given up at least one takedown in each of his last 5 fights. Frankie Edgar took him down 5 times. He struggled off his back against Charles Oliveira, but those are 2 examples of very good ground fighters. One very good wrestler, one very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player. On the flip side, Stephens may look to incorporate some wrestling. We have seen him take guys down before. But the issue is, again, if he takes Moicano down, he's still in a spot where Renato is comfortable off his back attacking. So he might look to incorporate wrestling, but I would anticipate he's going to try and use it in reverse and keep this fight standing. Moicano needs to fight very long in this matchup, remain technical, but he also has to be active. He has to find a nice balance of pushing the pace, being aggressive, landing strikes, but not opening himself up to getting cracked. For Jeremy Stephens, he has to be aggressive, push forward, lead the exchanges, not headhunt, remain technical, make everything count. And the way I've seen Moicano fight, especially in his last fight against Tuhugov, who throws with a lot of power, not as technical, or not as powerful as Jeremy Stephens by any stretch of the imagination, Moicano was having a lot of trouble with allowing Tuhugov to lead the exchanges, be the more aggressive fighter, come in, land strikes, and try and counter. And if you try and counter too often, and Moicano doesn't have knockout, he doesn't have a lot of knockouts, he has some pop, but he doesn't have the big power, and Stephens can take a punch. If you allow him to lead the dance, eventually he's either going to find a home for something significant, knock you out, or he's going to get ahead on the scorecards, you're going to struggle to catch up. I think Stephens either lands the more impactful strikes over the first part and wins the fight there, or he lands a massive strike and shuts the fight off. In the end, my prediction is Jeremy Stephens to defeat Renato Moicano by knockout. Fight number 2 in the main card also has major title implications, specifically with the middleweight division, as the former Strikeforce champion, number 3 ranked Ronaldo Jacare Souza, 24 wins, 4 losses, and 1 no contest, takes on the fast-rising 6th ranked Robert the Reaper Whittaker with a current record of 18 wins and 4 defeats. Now, the middleweight division is in disarray, to say the least. At least it's in a very odd, holding pattern. We've got George St. Pierre fighting Michael Bisping for the title. A lot of people feel the vast majority of the top contenders could all beat Bisping should they be given the opportunity. Yoel Romero, who most would point at and say he's the uncrowned champion of the division, is in a waiting pattern. He's holding, waiting for his opportunity. Luke Rockhold's been very inactive since dropping the title. We just saw the Mousasi-Weidman controversy, wondering what Mousasi will do next, wondering where Weidman goes from here. This is a pretty good fight, though. This is probably the most meaningful fight we'll have in the division, because both these guys are streaking. I can't see them jumping Romero with a win, but still, it's a good fight that really will set one of these guys up for a future opportunity. And Jacare, we've said that so many times, and he just can't seem to catch a break. He has won 2 in a row overall, and 10 of his last 11 with that controversial split decision loss to Yoel Romero at UFC 194. I took Romero in that fight. I felt it was very close and would not have been shocked to see Jacare get the nod there. For Whittaker, undefeated at middleweight since moving up from welterweight, 6-0, increased quality of opposition with every single fight. A win here for either one of these guys could get them the next shot at the champion after Yoel Romero. But with all the layoff and how things are being played out, I don't think there's a date set for GSP versus Bisping. We could very well be sitting, waiting for a long time. One of these guys, whoever wins this, could look for another opportunity to step in the cage, maybe against the other Gegard Mousasi, who Jacare already owns a win over. I think that's actually 1-1, so that fight could still work. Jacare 1 inch taller, Whittaker 1 inch reach, 11 years younger, though, for the New Zealander, which is quite a big gap. Jacare's 37, he's getting up there, so if he's going to do it, he needs to do it now, or at least sooner rather than later. Now, Whittaker, he has power. He throws some good, straight, long punches, a nice, stiff left jab. I like the way he throws a step-off left hook as well. For the most part, his strikes are singles or just 2 and out. He does a very good job of driving into his strikes. He can cover a lot of ground, and I really like the way he punches and engages and then exits from a different angle to really avoid counter strikes and letting his opponent tee off on him. Change. He also, there's a lot of footwork the New Zealander incorporates. He's bouncing around. He likes to move backward and then boom, stop and launch himself forward and attack, and then again exit out to the side. Good kicks. Not a ton of power behind some of his kicks. They're more like they measure the distance. Remind guys are there. Here, I'm going to kick you. Keep your eye open out for that, and maybe they'll set up some hand techniques with the lower range offensive weapons. Now, when he fought Derek Brunson, that was a chaotic first round. He did a heck of a good job of staying focused, remaining defensive, not getting overwhelmed with all the pressure Brunson was putting on him. He defended, avoided damage, and eventually took over the fight and finished him in impressive fashion. I don't think we're going to see the same thing here, so it's only, the fact that he was able to survive that high-intensity scenario, it just tells you how far this young guy has come. One of the big numbers worth looking at, 93% takedown defense for Whittaker. He's difficult to take down. He's not been taken down since going back to his Court McGee fight, which took place at welterweight. He needs to use movement, though, to stay elusive here. Hasn't faced anyone that was good on the mat as Jacare, and that's a big question mark. When you face a guy like Jacare, how does it affect, obviously, your ground game? How does it affect your striking game? Because you don't want to overextend yourself and get put on the floor. Jacare, we know what he's capable of. BJJ black belt, one of the best guys out there as far as grappling is concerned in MMA. Averages 3.48 takedowns per fight, 44% completion rate. The numbers aren't overwhelming. It's because he only needs one opportunity in a lot of fights, 1 or 2 opportunities to get an opponent down and finish them, and boom, locks up a submission, it's over. Most of his takedowns tend to come along the cage. He has a tendency to dive from the outside and look for those low singles that, catch his opponent off balance and just get a hold of them and then go from there. Sometimes he can come up short and it looks a little bit ridiculous, but for the most part, if it's working, why not? Why stop? He does a nice job, too, of punching and then coming forward looking for a double leg. He'll fall into his opponent, kind of fall into their waist if he gets him back against the cage, try to lock up those hands and drive him to the mat. If he can't do all that, look for him to clinch on the cage in addition to a takedown from there. Tim Boetsch had some success early in that fight, sprawling out of some takedown attempts. He was able to get his hips back, clinch up, and even separate at time and force Jacare to strike with him, which was obviously in the best interest of Boetsch. Eventually, Souza caught a kick, put him on the mat, locked up the Kimura for the victory. And now Jacare, if he is forced to work on his feet, he's certainly not a duck out of water by any stretch of the imagination. He's got some good power. He's got some good, vastly improving striking. Good front kick to the body. He'll throw a nice left jab. He'll throw a lead left hook as well. He comes forward again behind his strikes, which can lead him to opportunities to score takedowns, or he can just do damage with them if they do connect. He's very aggressive on the feet. Again, he's one of these guys he knows he can be, he can be aggressive. He's not afraid of being taken down. No one wants to take the guy down. He can be a little bit wild at times. He's cleaning that up. Still very dangerous overall, but his striking is a secondary aspect of his attack. For Robert Whittaker, though, he has to maintain separation. He has to stay on the outside. He has to pick his spots to attack without overcommitting, without opening opportunities up for Jacare to close the distance. Jacare has power, but he needs to avoid opening up too much with his hands. He needs to be able to close that gap without taking damage. Whittaker can certainly hurt guys with his striking. If Souza can set up his grappling, make his takedown opportunities count, and finish once he gets the foot on the floor, you don't want second opportunities where Whittaker starts getting up. You have to work harder and harder. If Jacare has a bit of a slowdown and Whittaker doesn't, we've seen what Whittaker can do against guys who aren't at 100%. And Jacare, he has been hurt before, and Whittaker has the right combination of speed and power to replicate that and potentially finish him if the opportunity presents itself. But I think the threat of the takedown from Jacare is going to slow Whittaker down on the feet. I think Jacare eventually will either push forward and just land a takedown, or he'll counter with some kind of level change, or maybe catch Whittaker trying to throw a kick like he did with Boach. Eventually put him on the mat. Jacare is a big, strong man. This could be one of those situations where Whittaker's size, he's not a small man by a stretch of the imagination, but coming up from welterweight, Jacare is a big horse of a man. And I think Jacare is eventually going to get him on the mat. And my prediction is Jacare Souza to defeat Robert Whittaker by submission. We move now to the co-main event of the evening. It's in the women's strawweight division as the fourth-ranked fighter in the division, and she was a member. She took part in the inaugural divisional title fight. Thug Rose Namajunas, 6 wins and 3 losses, takes on the former Invicta atomweight champion, the 6th-ranked karate hottie Michelle Waterson, currently coming in with a record of 14 wins and 4 defeats. Now, Waterson is coming off a submission win over Paige Van Zandt, a fighter that Namajunas has recently fought and defeated, an upset that I correctly predicted. I always throw that in because I get things wrong so often. I need to be aware of when I do get things correct or partially correct. Waterson is 2-0 in the inside the octagon. She's building towards a shot at the title. They're always looking for fresh faces. They currently have Jessica Andrade fighting the title next against Joanna Champion. Waterson wants to line herself up for that next opportunity. Rose had won 3 fights in a row since her failed title fight, but lost that split decision against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Rose started very well, won the first round. I thought she might have done enough to win the second round, but the judges didn't agree. At least 2 judges didn't agree with me, and Namajunas suffered a major setback, and since then Carolina's gone on and lost her shot at the title as well. She accounted for herself very well, though. I would think Michelle Waterson could get herself a shot at the title with a win here, depending on what happens with Joanna Champion and Andrade. Joanna could very well get herself a shot at the title in a rematch if she were to lose that fight, which could stall things out. But on the other side of things, Rose, I still think she needs another 1 or 2 wins because she has had that loss in that close fight to probably reestablish herself. But hey, stranger things have happened. Waterson, as I mentioned, former atomweight champion, so she's a fighter that's coming up again, had trouble making that weight, wanted to fight at a higher weight class, and here she is. Rose, 2 inches taller, she'll have a 3-inch reach advantage, and she is the younger woman by 6 years. Now, Namajunas is an incredibly dynamic striker, multifaceted fighter overall, improved wrestling, she's improved mentally, she's not as wild as she used to be, she's much more, tough. That last fight, though, it definitely showed you can still, grit it out and defeat her, but she's not going to break like we have seen her in the past. When you look at her wrestling, again, as I mentioned, improved wrestling. She got some good takedowns, body lock takedowns. She's exceptionally strong in the clinch, had a lot of success against Tisha Torres there. She's got a very good back take, very opportunistic grappler, but again, if she can combine that with better positional control in her wrestling, it just makes her that much more effective. That's why she beat Paige Van Zandt. She did a lot of damage in that fight with her ground and pound, excellent elbows. If she postures up, she has long limbs and a long torso. It really allows her to do damage where opponents cannot do much, cannot defend, or at least it's more difficult to defend against. She has relied on the clinch a lot in the past to neutralize her opponent's offense, especially if they get going. Torres had success, coming forward with flurries, and Rose would just jam her up in the clinch, hold her there, do some damage of her own, and eventually reset and attack and get things going again. When at distance, she throws a nice left jab, straight right combination. She'll work in a left hook. She has a very nice step in right hand, which she can land with a lot of pop, especially if she can step and catch her opponent coming forward a little bit. And I like the way she'll slide back out of range and counter an opponent who's being overly aggressive. Lots of kicking techniques. She's got long legs, which really adds to that length and separation. She'll attack her opponent's legs and body. She'll throw a nice switch kick, front kick to the body, which sent Karolina tumbling backwards in her last fight. Overall, she moves very well on her feet. She has good footwork, excellent head movement. She works a lot of fakes and feints into her striking cadence to really keep her opponents guessing and keep them from really setting up and anticipating and being able to pick up what she's going to throw next. Against Carolina, she was doing very well on the outside, but she took some damage in the clinch and got some knees taken to her, kind of took a little bit of her wind away, slowed her down, and that's where she ultimately lost the fight in that clinch position. Now, Michelle Waterson, she is a Jackson Wink trained fighter, a black belt in karate, as her name would indicate, karate hottie. She can work from distance, but she's also very strong in the clinch. When she's on the outside, she throws a lot of good kicks. Head, body, oblique kicks. She'll throw a left jab, right hook combination. Against Paige VanZant, she was spamming those side kicks early on, oblique kicks early on, trying to hold the center of the cage, hold distance, keep Paige on the outside, force her to get a little reckless, trying to close the distance and then capitalize. She was also throwing a spearing right hand, which she only landed a couple times before the fight eventually did lock up in tight. She has had some issues. We saw it against Magana. Paige VanZant briefly had it. Were able to push her into the cage and hold her there. Michelle does an excellent job with her head, using her head fighting to control and get out of that position. But again, it's a spot where she gets stuck in the wall, and against a fighter who can hold her there, that's not a beneficial position. Once she gets in the clinch, though, if she can create a little bit of separation, she has excellent throws. The head and arm throw she landed against Paige, she did something similar against Magana as well. She almost got rolled and reversed in that fight, but she eventually stayed on top, moved to mount against Magana, eventually got the finish. We've seen her have some tough situations. She was caught in an armbar in that fight. She defended it. Eventually got out. She has been submitted twice, though, so certainly her submission defense isn't perfect. When she fought Jessica Penne back at atomweight, she spent some time on her back, but against a very active guard, and I think we'll see something like that here in this fight. Going back to the head and arm throw, she was very impressive putting Paige VanZant on the mat once they tied up. And Paige is a strong fighter who likes that inside position, and Waterson just turned her, flipped her on her head basically and took advantage of that scenario. Eventually went to the body lock, looked for the rear naked choke, and was able to eventually put her to sleep. When I look at these two fighters, they're both very good fighters overall. They have a lot to offer. They're not, one-trick ponies by any stretch of the imagination. But overall, I think Rose is the more dynamic striker from the outside, and I think Waterson's going to have trouble bullying her in the clinch. And quite honestly, I think Rose would be smart to keep it on the outside where she's going to use her longer limbs and just offer more. And if she looks to close up, I think she'll find some success, maybe even use that advanced wrestling to put Waterson on the mat. And I like how active Rose's guard is. If Waterson were to get a position where she could attack from, it's going to make it very difficult for Waterson to set in. I don't think Michelle is going to be able to match Rose's volume, pace, diversity on the feet. And Rose will learn from what Paige VanZant did. Not rush in, not close up when she doesn't need to. Stick on the outside. I think Rose might score some wrestling if the situation presents itself. Land the better strikes, though, from distance. And she's not going to rush in. She's not going to make mistakes like that. I think Rose is just the more effective fighter here. A good fight, close fight, but my prediction is Rose Namajunas to defeat Michelle Waterson by decision. And finally, it is the main event of the evening, the Flyweight Championship, as the champion Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, 25 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, takes on the third-ranked fighter in the division, Wilson Hayes, 22 wins and 6 losses. Now, this fight was originally scheduled to take place at UFC 201 last July. Johnson withdrew, some other fights took place, and now we have this opportunity for both these men to re-engage. It's not really an anticipated fight, but it's the fight we're getting. For Wilson Hayes, he has won 3 fights in a row, 5 of 6 overall, the most relevant victory coming over Dustin Ortiz. He did lose to Jussier Formiga in that span, who can't seem to get himself his own title shot. He's one of the big names out there who still hasn't fought the title. He's coming off another loss, so that could be the final shot he had to get in the title hunt. We'll see if he can rebuild his opportunity, but Hayes has the shot now. Johnson has won 11 fights in a row, including 9 title defenses. He has won 2 rematches against top-ranked opponents. He has 5 finishes during his current stretch, and he has wins of the number 1, 2, 7, 9, and 11 ranked fighters in the division, plus taking out guys like John Dodson, Ali Bogatinov, and Koichi Horiguchi, all fighters who are no longer in the division, 2 of them no longer in the promotion, and that's really unfortunate with Horiguchi, Bogatinov, and Zach Makovsky all gone. Those are quality fighters that the division really needed, and when you lose guys like John Lineker and John Dodson, it's very disappointing overall. Some of the talent that has left this division, despite having one of the most talented champions out there. Johnson's looking to tie Anderson Silva's streak for title defenses. He had won 10 in a row, so there's a lot of pressure coming into this fight. And you ask questions, and I say this every time: how does he maintain focus? How does he remain committed? He seems like the guy who goes and works hard, but eventually some complacency must creep into his regiment, training for each fight, but we'll see if that eventually catches up to him. He is coming off a much more competitive fight than many expected against Timothy Elliott. He lost the opening round. He almost got submitted, or at least it was a pretty decent-looking submission on Elliott's part. So, he is human. Physically, Hayes 1 inch taller, sorry. Johnson will have a 1 inch reach advantage, and Mighty Mouse is the younger man by a year. Wilson Hayes has some title fight experience. He won the Elite XC bantamweight title back in 2008 in a 5-round fight, and he fought in 2 Bellator featherweight tournaments and 2 Bellator bantamweight tournaments. So the guy's he's got a lot of experience under his belt. We are very familiar with the champ. We know what he brings to the table. He's very technical, incredible cardio, carries a good pace, very quick, hard to hit, mixes wrestling and striking together, and as Joe likes to rave, he is one of the most technically gifted fighters we've ever seen inside the cage. So how do you beat him? Cruz beat him with takedowns back at bantamweight in his last loss. John Dodson cracked him a couple of times. Didn't knock him out, but certainly showed he can be hit. Tim Elliott won the early grappling exchanges and had a good submission attempt, as I already mentioned. So he is human, but you consider all the times people haven't been able to do anything to him. Those scenarios are far and few between. So the question is, what can Wilson Hayes do to win this fight? A lot of people talking about this fight just because there's no one else out there right now who's in position to challenge for the title. Hayes has got the opportunity. How does he win this matchup if he has any chance? I'd say he has to finish one way or another. He has to put Johnson away because I cannot see him winning 5 rounds against the champ, or at least 3 of 5 rounds, unless he can ground him with his wrestling, and that is easier said than done. Now, when you look at Wilson, his wrestling's decent. He had 9 takedowns, and he's a BJJ black belt. He's a very good ground fighter. He had 9 takedowns against Ulka Sasaki in that win. He had 6. He had 9 against Dustin Ortiz, and going back to the fight against Joby Sanchez, again, nobody's on the level of Demetrious Johnson. Very few are. But still, those are examples of how good he was on the floor, or you're putting guys on the floor. He has had success taking bigger men down. Yuri Alcantara, when he fought a bantamweight, he put him on the mat several times in a very controversial loss. He needs to have success with his wrestling. That's very simple, very straightforward. He needs to ground Johnson, keep him there, and score points from top position. Elliott took DJ down 4 times. Ali Bogatinov took him down twice. Johnson does have a 62% takedown defense, so again, not perfect, just very difficult to do with consistency. But on the flip side of things, and that's what we're going to do here, we're going to talk about what Wilson Hayes can do and what he can't do. Formiga took down Hayes 4 times and really had a lot of success on the mat against him. And Ulka Sasaki had some moments where he was able to counter on the floor and get the better of the scrambles. And, we could see DJ turn it around. He's one of those champions who he's like almost a little bit like George St. Pierre. He can show you, I can outdo you with this, I can outdo you with that. And we'll see if that's something he looks to do, or maybe he'll just say, no, I'm going to stay away from that realm altogether. That's where my opponent is strongest, so let's avoid it. So if that's the case, that leaves the Brazilian with the striking repertoire. And how does he win there? He has improved his striking. His movement looks better. He looks much more fluid than he used to. He has some pop in his hands. 0 wins by knockout. So if you're telling me the first knockout win of his career is going to come over Demetrious Johnson, wow, that's going to be quite the number 1 on his record. Overall, his volume, not great. 48 significant strikes is his UFC best against Dustin Ortiz, which involved a lot of takedowns. You compare that against DJ's best at 133 significant strikes against Ali Bogatinov. When he knocked out Henry Cejudo, he landed 21 strikes in half a round. So over 5 rounds, unless Wilson completely takes him out with his wrestling, Johnson's going to work him on the feet. He landed 88 shots against John Dodson in the second fight, and Dodson is quick and very difficult to hit in his own right. Hayes has been knocked out twice too, so that's another concern if you're on the feet. He's been rocked in multiple fights. Sanchez rocked him, almost knocked him out. Formiga rocked him. We've seen guys hurt him on the feet. So even if he has success standing, he's still vulnerable, and DJ has power. A lot of people don't get. He can hurt guys with his. We saw him knock out Benavidez. He can put guys down. We saw him knock out Cejudo, and so that's something Wilson Hayes has got to be concerned with. I would say the challenger's best hope in this fight is to land an early takedown while the fighters are still dry and catch a quick submission against DJ. Maybe, and just where he's not expecting it, pick up something and he's just not ready to defend against and lock it up, and that's it. That's his best opportunity. I would say once Johnson gets the fight beyond the end of round 1, maybe beyond the end of round 2, it's pretty much all over for Hayes. Even if they go the distance, he's not going to win this fight. And that's difficult to say because you never want to Miracles do happen, but I just see Johnson take. If Hayes can't get anything done in the first 5 minutes, first 7.5 minutes, and I'm being generous at 10, Johnson's going to take this fight over completely. And I'm not saying anything no one knows. You don't know. Everyone knows this out there. That's the way things will go if we get there. I think Johnson's going to outwork him on the feet. He's a smart fighter. He'll wear him down to the clinch. Don't be surprised if Hayes doesn't score an early takedown or two, but Johnson will just get back up at some point. And I think as the fight goes, if it does advance into the second half, Johnson just takes it over. Or there's a possibility Johnson cracks him. But overall, I think something significant is going to happen on the feet. So my prediction is Demetrious Johnson to defeat Wilson Hayes by knockout, retain his title, tie the record, and continue going forward as the only flyweight champion that the organization has known. So those are my 4 main card predictions for UFC on Fox 24. All of my prelims, as normal, will be at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I believe there are 9 of them, so please check them out. I probably have to shorten them up a little bit because that's a lot to do. As always, thanks for tuning in, guys. I didn't do a lot of Twitter. I didn't do a lot of tweeting for the last show. It's just with, again, I've said this before, with having young kids, 3 of them, things seem to coincide a lot of time with when the fights get started. By the time I get actually settled, it's like I'm exhausted, so I can try and tweet as much as possible. But, yeah, it just didn't happen last show. I'll try and be a little more active this time around. Either way, thanks for tuning in, guys. Always appreciate it. Feel free to message me on Twitter or anywhere else. If you have any questions, comments, keep it respectable because we all have bad days at work and some are worse than others. Let's hope we turn it around here, though. I'm looking forward to this card. This should be fun. All right, take care, guys.